My name is Henry Senkasi, the country director for Peace Uganda. Peace is promoting equality in African schools. As a country director, I'm responsible for the operations of the programs for Peace in Uganda. Peace Uganda was established in 2008 in Uganda. It is an international organization that builds and operates secondary schools in Uganda and other countries in Africa. We build low-cost secondary schools, mostly in rural, hard-to-reach areas, targeting disadvantaged children who would otherwise miss out on education if we hadn't established those secondary schools in the rural areas. Our aim is to access education to children in secondary and provide that opportunity for them to learn. And we provide low-cost secondary education, but of high quality. We have over 30 secondary schools across Uganda. Again, as I said, built in rural areas. Some of the key things that make this exceptional is our schools admit children from a poor background and whose results we don't have a cutoff for admission. For as long as a child has passed primary 7, they can be admitted in our schools, and that makes us unique. Secondly, we provide high quality education, but at a low cost, at a subsidized price. And that makes the children, wherever we have established our schools, be able to access our education, secondary education, because we are low cost by providing quality education. Thirdly, we locate our schools in the hard-to-reach areas where no provider would ever think about building a school there, because most providers are driven by profit. We are not driven by profit. We are driven by the need to have schools in those communities. And therefore, those three make us quite unique as an organization. Peace Uganda Education Conference, it will take place on the 10th of February. And the participants who have been invited should expect fruitful discussions around school recovery, how schools have reopened and recovered from the closure, almost close 2-year closure from COVID. They should expect very great discussions on tactics and tools on how which we shall be sharing, on how we have supported our schools to recover from the COVID break. And these are some of the things they will learn and appreciate. We'll discuss a lot around safeguarding of children in schools, especially right now when children have come back from a long break. And we all know they've had a lot of challenges. There will be a lot of discussion around school improvement in terms of how do we drive improvements in schools, especially beginning with the leaders in the schools and using evidence as a key driver for school improvement. But also, Peace will be sharing our system strengthening work, which mainly targets working with the other providers in this country, other providers of education in this country, to improve their tools, systems, and approaches to improving schools that we have learned as Peace for over the last 13 years. So we'd like to share them share our program and our future approaches, supporting the other schools as well in this country, especially working with the Ministry of Education together. We selected a theme, leading schools close the gaps, because in the last 2 years, close 2 years, schools have been closed. And therefore, there has been a huge impact on learning, on the learners themselves, on the teachers, on the leaders, and everyone, parents in the education sector, everyone in the education sector has been affected by this closure. The theme, Closing the Gap, is focusing on discussing what are those things that are critical to make sure the last 2 years, which can be considered as a loss in the sector, in the education sector, especially in the learners, how are we going to close the gap, the learning gap, which has been created by the closure of the last 2 years, closing of schools. So the discussion is going to rotate around how do we ensure that the gap which has been created by the closure of schools for 2 years is actually narrowed down, is narrowed, so that schools can bounce back, schools can build back, can build again, and move on with the normal teaching and learning in schools and other activities will happen in the school. And therefore, we consider this as a recovery period. And how do we recover from the 2 years and make sure we fill up the dots, we fill up the gaps which have been created in the teaching and learning, amongst teachers' skills and capacity, amongst leadership, amongst the parents and other stakeholders in the sector. The conference, which we have organized, is going to be important in bringing together stakeholders from different places within the education sector. And the conference will be helpful in sharing the tools, sharing the guidelines, sharing thoughts, sharing frameworks, sharing systems and different things that have been helpful in trying to ensure the education sector is recovering. And therefore, we look forward to this conference, really, participants really enjoying and understanding and sharing from everyone how we can recover, how we can support the sector to recover and bounce back. Parents and students should be able to attend the conference. First of all, to be able to understand how the effects of school closure during the COVID period. And that will be helpful for them now to discuss, to help their children on how they can recover back and learn. But also, there will be lots of discussions on safeguarding of children, how children can be safeguarded and be supported to go back to school. So that would be important for the parents and the learners to know and appreciate. But also, some of the discussions we are going to have around data-driven decision making or school improvement is around how do you help the learner as a parent? How do you interpret, use the learner's report, for instance, to understand some of the gaps that the learners are having, or your learner is having, and make sure they are supported to be able to recover and learn faster and catch up. But overall, we know that many parents haven't believed that schools open, and many parents still have their children at home. So we want to see that this conference is a mobilization kind of approach to ensure that parents start to believe that schools reopen and that children need to get back to school to learn. So we urge parents out there to really attend, listening, and feel that this is an appeal to them to send back children to school, that the sector is open, the education sector is open. The participants and who will be attending the workshop or the conference, the key takeaways will include understanding how to support schools, how to support learners, how to support teachers from this to recover back, to get back to the teaching, to get back to learning, to get back to supporting learners to recover from this last 2 years school closure and start move on with education. The other takeaway would be for participants to appreciate that for us to walk the journey of recovery from COVID, leaders in schools are critical at the entry for recovery. So that we need to focus on the leader in the schools and make sure that leaders appreciate and understand what it means to recover from the 2-year closure and get back to the business of teaching and learning. And lastly, we will be sharing our system strengthening work, which is our partnership with the government to support other schools, support government schools to recover, to improve in the teaching and learning. And therefore, we'll be discussing, participants will understand the partnership that we've had already with the government and how it's going to impact the education sector in Uganda, especially at secondary schools. I would like to appeal all the participants who have been invited to attend the conference on the 10th of February at Mestil from 9 o'clock to 4:30, that we are appealing to them to come and attend the conference. It's going to be a very, very fruitful conference. It's going to be discussing purely education and trying to remind everyone that schools are open again, the education sector is open again, and that schools are back and open. Therefore, I'd like to appeal to every participant to come and attend, those who have been invited to attend. Those who haven't been invited, there will be live streaming where all those who are interested in the workshop will be listening in as well. So my appeal is for participants to come, discuss the education issues, and at the end of the conference, we will be able to agree on how we are going to support the sector to recover from the 2-year closure.